Hey, Arlo and Frank. Grandpa coming to you from the Vatican. I'm currently camping at Tomoka State Park, which is, I guess, near Ormond Beach. That's close anyway. When I come to these places, I always look for some place that's nice and quiet that I can go out and sit at a picnic table or, wherever and record a couple of these if I can. And today I found them, but I didn't have the books or any of the equipment I needed. I only had my phone. Little kombucha wake me up. I needed to go to the bathroom this morning, and I went over, and these two ladies were cleaning it, and she said, well, it's going to be about 15 minutes until this is open. And I knew that there was one close by, and I started to point down the road, and I was going to ask, is that one down there open? I figured it was, because they don't have that many people going to have to clean them. But you never know. So as I was pointing down that way, she said, oh, number 2? Yeah, right down there. She meant bathroom number 2. But I thought, I'm a wise guy, but I'm not going to say, well, yeah, actually, I am going to do a number 2. So thanks, thanks for the advice. Today we're doing Puss in Boots. Now, this is not a story that I'm familiar with, except I always thought it was Puss in Boots, because I think there's some sort of I don't know, pet food or some kind of nonsense called Puss in Boots. So I thought it was Puss and Boots. But it's Puss in Boots. Once there was a miller who had 3 sons, and a miller, I think, is somebody who either makes barrels or mills grain. Maybe we'll find out. It's probably somebody who mills grain, but I'm trying to remember what, like, there's all these names for things that they used to use way back in the day. Like a cobbler was a shoemaker. There's probably no more shoemakers. There's some places with old men sitting in them that say that they're shoemakers, but most people just buy a new pair of shoes. Once there was a miller who had 3 sons. When the miller died, the oldest son became the owner of the mill. So, yeah, it's a mill. The middle son became the owner of the donkey, and the youngest son was left with only the cat. And here he is, like, I'm bummed out. I got a cat. Trust me, kid, I'd be bummed out too. My brothers can grind wheat with the mill and take grain to market on the donkey, said the youngest son. But whatever will I do with this cat? The cat had never been good for anything more than catching mice. So maybe the kid should learn how to eat mice. I mean, that's making lemonade out of lemons. The young man was feeling quite sorry for himself, which was foolish considering what was about to happen. Well, you can't blame somebody for not knowing what's coming in the near future. So that was kind of stupid. But I'm going to keep my commentary to a minimum. That's enough complaining, said the cat. Get me some boots, and I will be able to help you. Surprised to hear the cat speak. And who wouldn't be? The young man hurried off to the shoemaker's and came back with a pair of boots just the right size. cat put them on and stood up. He was now Puss in Boots. And there he is. Not only is he Puss in Boots, but he's Puss in Boots with a hat that has a feather or something coming out of it. Now I need a cloth sack with a cord at the top, said Puss in Boots. He filled the sack with grains of wheat and walked out of the house with the sack flung over his back. He went straight to the forest, where he opened the sack and laid it on the ground. The cat hid behind a tree and waited. Soon, some fat partridges came by and wandered right into the sack. Quickly, the cat pulled the sack shut and flung it over his shoulder again. So he's quite an industrious cat. Oh, I didn't show you that picture of him trapping the partridges. This time the cat went straight to the king's castle. He bowed low before the king and said, "My master, the Duke of Carabas sends you his regards and these pretty partridges." Now the king loved to eat partridges for supper. He had never heard of the Duke of Carabas. Of course not, there was no such person. But he thanked Puss in Boots for the lovely present and told him to fill his sack with gold for his master. The miller's son was amazed when he saw the gold. And here's the cat with the king and a dead bird. The miller's son was amazed when he saw the gold. Puss in Boots went hunting partridges every day after that. At the king's castle, he became a favorite guest, always allowed to make himself at home. One day, while lying by the hearth in the king's kitchen, he heard that the king and the princess would be taking a carriage ride around the lake that afternoon. And here he is, chilling by the fireplace. I could have used that. Well, last night it wasn't that cold. It went into the 50s last night, but it went into the 30s the night before where I was. I wish I had a fireplace to chill by or to warm up by. And now, I don't even remember if I showed you that. The cat ran home and said to his master, "Quick, you are going swimming." By this time, the young man was more than happy to do whatever the cat told him. So he hurried to the lake, undressed, and jumped into the water. The cat took his clothes and hid them away. Just then, the king's carriage came into view. The cat stood by the side of the road and began to wail, "Oh, help, help, my master is freezing. Someone stole his clothes while he was swimming in the lake, and he cannot come out of the water." And here he is by a weird colored lake. Pointing to his master and trying to pull off some sort of a ruse. The king recognized Puss in Boots and ordered the carriage to stop. One of his servants took a blanket to the miller's son, and another servant raced back to the castle for a suit of clothes. When he was dry and dressed in the splendid clothes, the miller's son certainly looked like a duke. The king believed that he was the Duke of Carabas and invited the young duke to ride in the carriage, which pleased the princess. There's always a princess, isn't there? She was happy because the young man was so handsome. Puss in Boots was very happy with the way events were working out. He ran ahead of the carriage. I think I forgot to So I guess this child next to me is upset that I'm reading a story that scares him. Puss in Boots was very happy with the way events were working out. He ran ahead of the carriage, first to a wheat field, then to a meadow, and finally to a forest. In each place he asked the workers there, "Who owns this land?" Each time the answer was the same. The ogre, of course. "Well," said the cat, "the king is on his way here." When he asks you the same question, you must say that the owner is the Duke of Carabas. Otherwise, the ogre will eat you. And you don't want to be a snack for an ogre. All of the workers were afraid of the ogre and astonished by the cat. So when the king's carriage drove by, the king leaned out of the window and asked, "Who owns this land?" The workers answered him exactly as the cat had told them to do. The king and the princess were pleased to know that the young duke was so wealthy. Puss in Boots ran on until he came to the ogre's castle. He walked right in and bowed to the ogre. "I have heard," said the cat, "that you can turn yourself into any animal at all. I'm sure you can turn yourself into something ordinary, like a dog or a fox. But I don't believe you can turn yourself into something spectacular, like a lion. I have to be convinced. Show me." Well, apparently, the ogre can turn himself into a lion, because there he is. The ogre was happy to do so. He became a lion so ferocious that even Puss in Boots was afraid, but only for a moment, because he's a trickster. "A nice trick," said the cat, "but surely you cannot turn yourself into something very small like a mouse." "No problem at all," roared the ogre, and in an instant he was running around the room as a mouse. Puss in Boots had not caught any mice for quite a while, but if you remember from the very beginning of the story, the kid said the only thing he's good at is catching mice. But he caught this one and ate him up with one gulp. Who's the ogre now, ogre? There he is, Puss in Boots, capturing the mouse. Just then, the cat heard the king's carriage approaching. He ran outside to welcome the king and the princess to the castle of his master, the Duke of Carabas. The king was amazed by the magnificent building, almost more stunning than his own castle. The young man was amazed by what the cat had done for him. The Duke married the princess, and when the king died, the Duke became king. Puss in Boots was his chief advisor, with time off now and then for catching mice. The end. And here's the Duke with his bride. And they all lived happily ever after.